All right, welcome back to AM Live. We've been joined by Annabelle Njoki, an advocate. I had asked the other panelists to weigh in on what has graced the front pages of pretty much all the dailies apart from the Business Daily and People Daily, and that is the High Court judgment on the appointment of 50 CASs. Your thoughts? Did you see it coming? I had asked the same of Nerima Wako. You know, there was this debate. Now, given you're an advocate, there was this debate over stay and etc. Can you perhaps, if you had occasion to listen to it, shed some light on what that debate was all about and what the implications would have been?
First of all, which stay? Because there's reference to two stays. One, which was is the one given by the Court of Appeal in the initial CAS matter. Is that the Okiya Mtata one? Yeah. And then the second one is pertaining to this current positions where they were appointed, and then matter was filed in court and they were told do not assume office, which is actually more of an injunction. So really. At the end of the judgment... So the only stay at this point in time, I believe, that we would make reference to was the initial one from, was it the 2018 matter? So the 2018 matter was appealed, and then the Court of Appeal gave stay, stopping the Justice Mrima decision from being effected, which was pretty much declaring those offices unconstitutional. And the court rightly put it that that stay is no longer effective because the minute the Public Service Commission decided to abolish that particular office and now create this one that we had a decision delivered on yesterday, the whole issue was overtaken by events. So then how, it was also quite funny. The appeal, so what, it rendered that appeal. So the issue, the appeal court... It's overtaken by events. So, but there was an appeal, I'm assuming? Yes. Okay. There was an appeal. It's still in court, not yet determined. But now how, I found it rather funny yesterday when they were raising issues of, Your Honor, there's a stay on what? Stay on what? The people you're representing abolished the office. Once the office is no longer in existence, I think it's safe to say that even that appeal will not hold. It will be rendered nugatory because it may put on our cutting. All right. Yeah. But at the end of the judgment, there was an application to stay the orders issued yesterday, pending appeal. So had the stay been granted, which it was not, what would have been the implication of that? Would these 50 CASs then have proceeded to undertake their duties of CAS? That would have been a technicality because we were even a lot of us were discussing it in legal circles yesterday because you already have an order stopping you from assuming office, and then we are having your counsel telling the court that you know, you've been performing your duties, and the first question is, on what basis have your clients been performing their duties? Because they were not even supposed to assume those duties to begin with. So I look at it as you're already admitting contempt of court. But at this point, this court is done with you, so there's really nothing they can do about it. Then there's, I think it would have opened a technical opening, a technical window for them to continue performing their duties. Yeah. All right. So let's now get into the topic of conversation. This is what I asked yesterday on Twitter, and here we go. The question is, President William Ruto a master of doublespeak by renouncing pay rise proposed by SRC Kenya on the heels of a contested Finance Act, yet having appointed 50 CASs? Several people shared their thoughts on Twitter. And somebody here asks, this is Kirui, anauliza kwa nini panel yako yote ni ya wamama? Why? Kaliria says double standards. Twikongro Teach says we are proud of our judiciary, good verdict. Esco William says the question should be if they will obey court orders.
Definitely, they're heading to the Court of Appeal. SRC is a joke meant to create timeline. I mean, how do you force someone's salary increase who is denying in public and accepting in secret, yet some low cadre just dream of salary? Jane Mora says he renounced what SRC is constitutionally mandated to do, knowing very well it was inconsequential. La Mazare says watu warudi shamba sasa. Gidi Blackman says waende nyumbani. M Hisa says watu wa kuuza shuka na bloggers warudi kwa kazi zao. David Mwenda says that is not even the question, it is the answer. The guy never means what he says, never believe him. All right, I will leave the comments. Oh yeah, Lucia says, and lifting the logging ban age. And then, I don't know which CS Charles Kosh is referring to. He says, huyo ni CS wa English Premier League. And then Gisemba Nyatori there. This is Samuel who says, oh yes, just an opportunistic and scheming as would any other politician. And then Canings 99 says, systemia facts to come up with narratives of how the judiciary is in bed with the opposition. And then Abraham Washara says there is no need of waiting until tomorrow morning. It will be late. Let me finish with you, Ali. The answer is yes. He is a master of doublespeak. Look at this. And I don't know what video this was about. I cannot play it. I will look at it on my phone. So I will look at more of the comments as we go. I've seen somebody else saying we are the opposition as the media. But your response to this question, and I'll start with Nerima Wako. Nerima, as I mentioned earlier, is joining us virtually. She's joining us via Zoom. Is there an element, in your view, of hypocrisy when we look at the judgment of, not the judgment, the interpretation of the judgment by the High Court? When I look at the standard, it says President William Ruto is between a rock and a hard place on what he will use to reward his cronies after the courts found the CAS position unconstitutional. The Nation puts it this way. It's the second time positions dished out mostly to poll losers have been nullified. When the president was on the campaign trail as deputy president, he had said he would shughulikia the hustlers and his administration would not be about sharing out positions. Is there an element of hypocrisy when he fronted these 50 names? I beg your pardon, when he appointed these 50?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it was surprising to hear that they haven't been receiving a salary yet. I know a few of them who have had security and offices and cars. So even around them, there has been resources that has been going toward them, which is not necessarily linked to their salary. So it's a double speak, because you also have seen particular advisors talking about David D, sharing how when now he's in government, he's seeing the amount of spending and luxurious spending within government, and it's very difficult to stop, even though he doesn't agree with it. But this political rewards is something that is completely shifting who is receiving power. We have seen public service, unfortunately, especially positions of high ranking, being degraded. Because you're giving political candy and appointments because of support. You want to be able to give people a position because you said, you stood with me, and because you stood with me, I'm going to give you this particular position as a reward. And that is harmful, because we have seen degradation of offices, because now people are entering this particular office, not respecting the office, not understanding the office. And I can speak that with departments, that you have seen a huge shift where now you have individuals that do not understand their particular role or what they represent and who they represent. And this is harming the public service sector. And this, for me, is concerning, because when we talk about these particular CAS positions in the Uhuru administration, there was one individual who was representing, let's say, 7 offices. Now we are having 7 people representing 1 office. And so you're seeing now redundancy, repetition of roles. And then that is also bringing a lot of confusion. I've also been working with people where now they're like, I don't understand the ranking, I don't understand the hierarchy, and there's so much bureaucratic processes that has been added to government that is already bureaucratic. So we're finding a gridlock. And so it's good that this is happening. I believe also the president has been left in a tight spot because he did feel that he needed to reward individuals, but I wouldn't say that political reward is the only reward. Surely, there are so many other Kenyans in this country who are capable to represent those particular spaces, who can bring about change, and that our reward is to get the Kenyan people. Why does politics have to be the only reward? Why do you have to be visible for you to be seen to be receiving a reward? And it's also harmful because he is going against the public, the hustler narrative that he's pushing forward. Yet we've seen no hustlers benefit. We have seen positions going to people who have been belonging to the elite, people who are wealthy, people who run businesses, people who own businesses. If anything, create an economic environment that can support their business so that they can create employment or they can create opportunities. That's where I would see a reward. It doesn't necessarily mean sitting in an office and having your name in the headlines and being visible. But it's been interesting to see how former cast members have taken this. A lot of them have tried to show on their social media platforms that it doesn't affect them, that it doesn't bother them, that's just, this is a small hurdle. I saw one cast saying that, you know, us not having employment, it doesn't make a difference. That's such a, you know, a drop in the ocean. But you can see that they are hurt by it, and they should be. Kenyans are struggling right now, and we're seeing, you know, they're pushing for a pay rise, but Kenyans can't afford access. When you're, you know, you are reading the report and you're seeing 3 households are able to afford food. This is scary. 3 out of 10, not even 50% of the population can afford food on the table. This is the what should be giving the president sleepless nights, not political appointments.
I'm curious, Sylvia, what your thoughts are. Full disclosure, and Vivian, I will come to you, but just for that balance. I borrowed the Master of Doublespeak from the Saturday Standard, and this was their headline, Masters of Doublespeak. And as Nerima has done, they've done that comparison, you know, of the 2 Kenyas, so to speak, and the proposed pay rise for state officers as well as other cadres in the public service. And then they actually say two-faced as Kenya Kwanza regime urges the salaried and other workers to be patriotic and tighten their belts in the face of heavier tax burden. The pay slips of President Ruto, his deputy, state officers and MPs are poised to grow fatter by 14% as the new deductions shrink those of the rest of Kenyans. I briefly touched on that Vihiga County Assembly saying mshahara yao iongezwe so that they can be cushioned from the housing levy, to accommodate the housing levy. What of the rest of us, Sylvia? Is it, I mean, what do you make of this assessment?
To be frankly honest, you know, sometimes we are too engrossed in judging the moment and not really analyzing and thinking through the processes and the decisions that lead to some of the processes that lead to some of the decisions taken. And if you ask me, in my view, first of all, when we go to the SRC, they are proposing the salary increment of civil servants. Civil servants have had a pay freeze for quite some time. A teacher that is standing in the classroom every single day has been asking for a pay rise. And we remember they had a lot of walkouts during the previous government until they had to sit down and come to a salary increment agreement for them, which has not been effected. And so SRC is just coming forward to say that, you know, some of this has to go up, commensurate to the tax increases that we're experiencing at the moment. And so when a lot of Kenyans are talking, they're not talking from a civil servant point of view. They're talking from, you know, the angle of private sector. The private sector, most of the people are well paid. They have good salaries, they have pension scheme, I mean, they have benefits that come along with their salaries. And so I think we need to be a little bit more sensitive. The other issue we have to adhere to, to focus on to here is also that the president actually did request the SRC to postpone the increase of the senior civil servants. And that means the MPs and all the rest of them. However, it's the SRC who are saying, no, we will increase all the civil servant salaries. So it's not saying, that there's double speak here. There's somebody speaking, there's other people speaking, and then all of it is being burdened on this one single president because it's his entire government. But we have to give due respect where it is deserved. The president and the Kenya Kwanza team, they have a manifesto, and that, which Nerima was mentioning about the benefits of the hustlers and all that, that is embedded in the finance bill, which has always been shrouded in darkness. Nobody ever knows what's coming up in the finance bill. It gets onto the table, it's quickly read out, and very minimal debate on it, and it's done. For the first time, we've had it go to public, for public opinion. So we are getting to know what is in the finance bill, what is in it for me. We just sometimes need to sit down and appreciate that our government is moving forward. Our democracy is growing. So we applaud to say that the hustlers, they are taken care of in the finance bill. There are a lot of aspects in terms of the reduction, the increment. All of it is to take care of our economy so that any single person in this Kenya, and I'm talking about people that really, really live the lowest of lives in this country. Some of us can sit superfluously and believe that we know. But if you walk into Kangemi today, in a place called Kibagare today in Westlands, you will find out for yourself that there's somebody who is looking for 10 shillings to buy 2 chicken legs so they can afford their food. But this is a finance bill that is supposed to bring us all up, that whoever cannot afford, somebody else will take care of him. And therefore, the salary increment for the civil servants is to also cushion them so that they can be able to also remit some of the, the taxes that they are due. And on the other hand, delay that one of the senior civil servants. But the CIS problem was and has been there, but it was also budgeted for, bearing in mind that some of the ministries or the state departments were broken down further. Because they have been added. Like if you go to the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, he has the inspectorate, he has the government delivery service, and he also has the parliamentary liaison. All those he cannot handle by himself. So he will need support and other people to go around. All right.
Annabelle, I'll ask you to what your thoughts are on that first quote on the front page of the Daily Nation. But before then, Vivian, am I being too simplistic by asking why effect a housing levy and then increase the pay? Why not just use the money you would for the increase of pay for the housing levy? Just like, don't they cancel each other out?
Olive, my thoughts about this double speak thing, and I think I will just come out clearly and say it. I think there's a lot of dishonesty from the government side, and I would have wanted to see the president lead from the front in terms of bringing about a positive change for Kenyans, essentially, because that is the platform upon which he campaigned. He campaigned on the platform of inclusivity. He campaigned on the platform of, change. Things will change, like for the hustlers. But right now, if you talk to a regular boda guy, if you talk to a mamamboga, someone running a kiosk or anything, you will hear the sentiments are the same all over. I saw someone tweeted saying they run a small food shop and they pay 4,000 in electricity tokens a month, up from what they were using before, I think, which was 2.5. So their cost of doing business has gone up like by 1,500 in a month. Fuel is now 195 a litre. We've never gotten to this level. And the honest truth is, for people who are small business owners, people who work in the private sector, a lot of them have not had salary increases for a very long time. And because we were coming on the back of COVID, a lot of people actually had to take pay cuts to be able to stay, you know, in employment. And a lot of these people have not gotten back to maybe what their salaries were prior to COVID. So all these proposals by government, it's like, it's assuming you're earning money to service the government, not your life. On top of that, I saw the president was also proposing an increase in NHIF contributions. Mm-hmm. So it's like he's insensitive to the fact that the people who are in the private sector, so to speak, or are employed, it's like you have an endless, you know, pot of gold which can just be milked. The government is insensitive to the fact that the cost of living has gone up and people are actually struggling. People are struggling to keep their kids in school, put food on the table, pay rent. So it's like they keep proposing to add taxes, to add costs onto your already small salary, which has not gone up. And yet, ironically, their salaries, you know, senior public government officials, are going to go up, which will take care of these additional costs. Like, even though they will also be charged for housing levy and NHIF, but then their salaries are going up. So they won't feel the difference. What about the person who's earning 30,000 or 50,000?
And has been earning maybe the 30 or 50,000 for
yeah,
the last 5 years?
What are they going to do?
Because this accommodates inflation.
Yeah.
All right.
How are they going to survive? So I feel like there's a lot of insensitivity from the government side. We cannot be taxed into prosperity. Okay. We are not saying we don't want to pay taxes. I mean, it is how we will develop ourselves. But can there be a fair regime about how we go about this whole taxation thing, and still keep in mind that people want to have livelihoods, people want to live well? Okay. Yeah.
Annabelle, I said I would invite you to weigh in on the front page of that quote that's been published on the front page of the Daily Nation. Am I close? Yes, I should be. Here we go. And it reads, "It is our considered view that it was not the intention of the framers of the Constitution to create positions of 50 CASs to deputize 22 cabinet secretaries."
And the court proceeded to give its reasons why. Part of the things the court said is that when you're interpreting legislation, you look at, you know, the spirit of that document, the spirit of the drafters, and where sometimes that is not clear, you then have the leeway to look at the circumstances that were at play at the time when that particular piece of legislation was coming into force. And they took us back to the Bomas process, and one of the things that they highlighted was part of the issues that Kenyans raised then was the fact that they were tired of having too many individuals, especially political individuals, in the public service because it was burdening them, and they did not see the need for the office of assistant ministers. And even when the draft document was again taken to Naivasha and they did whatever they did with it, that was the one thing that never made it back onto the document. So at the point of us promulgating the current constitution, we did not have assistant ministers, now CASs. And even when, then on top of that, we're limited as to how many ministries we can have, all right? So if we're setting a cap on the number of ministries, each of these ministries are headed by an individual, and we're talking of a republic where people do not want these individuals deputized, even if you are to deputize, because again, the court rightly agrees, between the president and the PSC, they can't create additional offices as long as they are guided by Article 3 and Article 10. That is a caveat. Even if you were to go ahead and exercise that power and create these new offices, you cannot do it contrary to the spirit of this document and contrary to the spirit of the people. Remember, power comes from the people. So we cannot be having 22 CSs and then you want to give us more. And even if you're to give us more, one, you have to consult the Public Service Commission. PSC also have to consult SRC to find out, is it doable, is it not? What salary scale do you recommend for this particular individuals? And then you also have to go to members of the public and tell them, now, we want to create this office. These are the number of people we're looking at. This will be the implications. What say you? There was already sufficient opposition from members of the public in the initial creation of the 23 positions. Of the views they received, I believe they got 900 and something, of which 100 and something were people applying for the job. Umeitishwa maoni, umeona wacha nitume CV. I think it communicates just how badly people are doing out here. And then there was 600 saying no, because they're like, with the current economic situation, this is not the time. And then there were the others who were like, okay, it's an okay office, we get the logic. Now, you've only communicated to members of the public that you're creating 23. You've only collected views pertaining to 23. And then magically, we have 27. Now, when we were on break, there was a conversation here with Kena Vivian about what some of the CASs were saying, at least in their circles, that perhaps, you know, it would have been better if they had just declared the 27 unconstitutional and not the 23. But the court cannot do that, because how is the court supposed to determine who the 27 were to be, who the 23 were to be? It can't pick and choose. It's not its purview. Its purview was simply to determine, was this process above board? Period. And they have said it was not. So you all go back to the drawing board. Let you, the creators of this problem, figure out who's going home, who's staying. Or whether you're going to advertise afresh. That's on you.
All right.
Yeah, but I actually agree with the court.
Okay.
Now, and as far as SRC, I'm hearing a lot of talk, but I like, you know, the thing about this line of work of ours, you have to be as honest and factual as possible. It looks like, I guess because of the timing, it looks like SRC is doing this to cushion civil servants from the current state of things. But this is a process that started in 2020. So haijaanza juzi. This process started when J.B. Muturi was still Speaker of the National Assembly. It started when David Maraga was still Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So that tells you it's been a 3-year period coming, or almost 4 years now. If we're talking August 2020, it's actually almost 4 years. And we go back to the mandate of the SRC, which is what? At 230, Article 234, the powers and functions of the Salaries Remuneration Commission shall be to set and regularly review the remuneration benefits of all state officers, which is why you hear her saying the president has given his opinion. They do not recommend. When it comes to state officers, SRC hawaombi ruhusa. What they say you're going to be paid is what you're going to be paid. Advise the national and county governments on the remuneration and benefits of all other public officers. Now, remember, all your county governments...
Sorry, what article are you reading from? I can pull it up.
234.
Okay.
Article 230, sub-article 4.
Okay.
Advise the national and county governments on the remuneration and benefits of all other public officers. Now, you all know your county governments have, or all your counties have public service boards. So the public service boards are the ones who get to determine those terms, but SRC recommends to them what it is any public servant of the county government should be paid. And then now, in performing their functions, they need to ensure that there's total public compensation, that the total public compensation bill is fiscally sustainable. They need to ensure that the public services are able to attract and retain the skills required to execute their functions. C, the need to recognize productivity and performance, and transparency and fairness. Now, I take you back to August 2020 on the 14th, and SRC put out a notice of salary survey for the 2021-2022 to 2024-2025 remuneration review cycle for the public sector, because they do this every 4 years. Now, where do they get this power from? Section 11D of the SRC Act mandates SRC to conduct comparative surveys on labor markets and trends in remuneration to determine the monetary worth of the jobs in public offices. Not the individual, the job. So you're working as an immigration officer too. The equivalent of that immigration officer too across board, cutting across, private sector, ideally what should you be earning currently? And they carry out 3 surveys. One survey is a salary survey of all public sector institutions. The second survey is a salary survey of benchmark jobs in private sector institutions. That's why I said, kama wewe ni immigration officer too, what is the equivalent of your cadre in the private sector? What are people there earning? And therefore, what should you be earning? And then 3, international benchmarking for selected state offices jobs. What was the aim of this survey? The surveys will provide information on current compensation levels and trends, including policies and practices to inform salary structures for now, that cycle of 2021-2022 to 2024-2025. So SRC did not wake up yesterday or over the weekend and decide that these things are being reviewed. Please remember, whatever now we're hearing them telling us as of 1st July is something they were supposed to do back in 2021. But they did not because COVID. Now, I find that sometimes the shortfall of working in government is that government to the people is perceived as a system. So you tend as a civil servant to lose the human face. So that we like talking about government and Kenyans as if civil servants are not Kenyans, as if they do not stand to be affected by everything that we're affected by. And I remember a conversation I was having with a former classmate who's currently working in one of the ministries, and she was saying, Bana, we can't do this anymore because based on my salary, please remember this is an advocate, a professional, once currently all deductions are made, I am taking home 50K. Now, the other shortfall of being a civil servant is when you have pieces of legislation like the finance bill being passed, unlike private sector who can find ways to maneuver and mitigate. Mtasema, we are going to, if you're on PNP, we're probably going to put you on contract, and then we're going to pay you maybe 10,000 less so that we evade this clause. When you're working in public service, you do not get to explore those options. Even if the axe falls on you first, because government has to show that it is complying with its own directives. So it's not like they're not feeling the pinch that we are, okay? And they have been feeling it for that entire duration that we have been feeling it. There are institutions like judiciary where staff, God knows, we can't remember the last time they had a salary review. We all remember the time when Mutunga and Sholei did it. Post that, have we had conversations about judiciary staff? Not magistrates, not judges. Have we had conversations about judiciary staff? So what kind of lives do we imagine that these people are living? And yes, we are hurting. Even I'm complaining every day about how my take home is just decreasing, and every time I go shopping, it is a stuff of nightmares. But if I'm feeling it, then they're also feeling it. Now, SRC, it's easy to demonize them, but SRC is basically just performing their function. I have clearly read out the mandate to you. They're supposed to do that. They have done it. Now, let everybody else who is in their cycle or their chain of approval say no. So, in as far as doublespeak goes, for me, here is where the president's doublespeak is. The president's doublespeak is not in SRC now bringing to the table the conversation of this salary increments. The president's doublespeak is in saying, usiniongeze mimi, msiongeze Gachagua, msiongeze CSs. That's you saying it. But we've seen in the past, you remember a time when Sarah Serem was chair of the commission and she went to parliament and there was a whole showdown between her and the parliamentarians, and they were like, you, by the way, if you don't give us this increment we want, ata your budget yenyu hatuta approve. So if Mengich does not do her job, she runs the risk of that blackmail that Parliament normally exercises. I mean, it's well within their purview. Okay. Already we've had MCAs sending salvos her way. So if really truly, and it goes back to, I think something, was it J.B. Muturi said when he was speaker? Kama utaki mshahara, it is well within your right not to accept it. When that remittance is made, for all intents and purposes, you can donate to charity, or you donate it to your constituents, or you even send it back to your employer or to treasury. It's well within your purview. So when the rubber will meet the road is once this takes effect, because I am hand on heart, I am willing to bet this is going to pass. Once that has passed, let us see them remitting that additional 100,000 they're supposed to get every month. Otherwise, like I told you, once you're a state officer and SRC has set your salary, they have set your salary. It is not up for debate.
All right. In fact,
they're doing their job.
Megich has been a victim of that blackmail
yes.
when she met MPs in Mombasa. All yes. right after they took office. That is this particular house. We take a break. We come back. I have a question for Nerima Wako, still on the question of double speak and how some in the Kenya Kwanza camp have changed tune on the judiciary following the suspension of the Finance Act. And this recent, as the Standard describes it, body blow on the appointment of 50 CASs. All right, welcome back to AM Live. The conversation, as Annabelle had alluded to earlier, continues even during the break.
Me, I pay tax even though I am in Azimio.
Oh dear. Okay, all right. So I wanted Nerima Wako to weigh in on this. This is the guy who said we will not change even a comma, Senator Kiprotich Arap Cherargei, and he tweeted, judiciary, like any other arm of government, like executive and parliament, must, in caps, be ready to be called out when they go, in caps again, rogue, exclamation point. Chief Justice Martha Koome-led judiciary is most likely to go down as one of the most incompetent, ineffective, corrupt, and inept in post-independence Kenya. We cannot allow justice to be auctioned to the highest bidder or represent partisan interests or be gatekeepers of political machinations. This was not the intention of the Constitution 2010. While judiciary is an independent institution, it does, and again in caps, not give them right to act excesses while enjoying unchecked power. Vibrant democracy recognizes checks and balances in all arms of government, including judiciary. He asks who will watch the watcher. I'm curious what Nerima Wako makes of the sentiments. Aaron Cheriot fired a couple of salvos himself following the suspension of the Finance Act. Is this another case of doublespeak because the president came out and said, you know, he will entrench the independence of these institutions, giving them an autonomous budget and the like? Your thoughts on these sentiments at this point in the day?
I love how he talks about the vibrancy of the democracy. This is a vibrant democracy, criticism, disagreement. We don't necessarily all arms have to agree on a particular issue. This is healthy. The fact that it's up for debate. And we've seen the struggle and the tug and pull between the executive and the judiciary. We're talking about independent institutions, yet they still rely on a huge amount of their funding from government, from the executive. So it's not necessarily independent. And we've seen even in the previous administration how they have been hanging or dangling in terms of, you know, with CJ Maraga, if you do not support, then we will reduce your funding. And we saw now in terms of an increase in funding in the judiciary because there seemed to be some form of agreement. So there's a tug and pull. For me, I'm happy to see it. And it's all about the Constitution. In Article 10, when we even talk about values, what I think is dangerous is how we are using language in terms of, you know, insulting, calling it a rogue sort of arm and things like that. We've seen how they've already done that to us as civil society and framing and calling us evil society and, you know, questioning why we are pushing westernized agendas and foreign aid. This is all a narrative to frame or create a perception in the public. And I don't think that's good. I think Kenyans, you know, we are looked up to when we look at the entire region. People follow particular judgments based on what happened in Kenya. There are a lot of court cases that set precedents for the whole region. And so we respect our courts, which we should, as we should. So for me, it's all about what is facts. And this particular administration likes to call themselves system facts. So follow the facts. And if you're able to argue, then may the best woman or man win in the courts. But if you can't argue, then, hang your tools down. So I'm proud. I'm proud to be Kenyan. I'm glad that we have courts that are able to determine huge issues and not necessarily determining where a particular matter will go, and bringing in the Finance Act as well, because we work with a lot of members of parliament. You're calling them and asking them what's going on in the House, and a lot of them will tell you, our hands are tied. Hands are tied. This one has to pass. There's nothing I can do about it, even though they feel that they don't want it to pass because their constituents don't want it to pass, but they're telling you their hands are tied. Is that what we want to hear from every single arm, that their hands are tied? No, absolutely not. Because today it's you in power. Tomorrow you will not be. And you want to be able to have protection under the rule of law.
Very good point there. Today you're in power, tomorrow you're not. So you'd want these institutions to operate independently. You spoke of civil society also being labeled rogue. Media to go same what's up. Sidney Chazima yesterday, he was covering the proceedings in court, posted Kimani Ngujiri exclaims silently, tumekuja koti ya Azimio. So, and it seems that the judiciary is damned if they do, damned if they don't, because Azimio just the other day, following the Supreme Court verdict, were up in arms against the judiciary, saying they have been captured. And now, when a decision doesn't go the administration's way, we have those who say, oh, the judiciary is not independent. It is, I agree with Nerima, quite dangerous. All right, my question to you, Vivian, is this. Ruto following in Uhuru's footsteps. And when I posted the double speak front page of the Standard, my colleague Patrick Lagat shared this with me and said, we did this one fast. Ruto following in Uhuru's footsteps, same script, he vowed to chart his own path during the campaigns. But after just about 9 months in office, the actions and policies of President William Ruto's administration have so far done little to differentiate it from that of his predecessor, Uhuru Kenyatta. At a glance, they tell us failure to meet two-thirds gender rule, housing fund, plans to lease out ports, cronyism in state appointments, CAS appointments, entrenching state capture of independent institutions, use of political numerical advantage to bulldoze legislators or legislations, or proposals, luring opposition MPs to government side, competence-based curriculum. Your thoughts?
These are just like marks of like a forming dictatorship. It's like the sentiments of the people are totally disregarded. I mean, government is supposed to have the interests of the people at heart, ideally. It's supposed to create an enabling environment for people to do business, to work, to live well, and of course provide necessary services. But right now, even just going by the KDHS survey that just came out, families are struggling to feed themselves. Healthcare is still an issue. Basic things which should not be issues. We are supposed to, we are aspiring to be like how Singapore and the Asian tigers were. I've had the government, the president and even the government officials say that. But when you look at the reality, our policies, our actions do not mirror what the Asian tigers did to turn their fortunes. Right now, there's double speak in the sense that the president is saying on one hand, oh, don't add our salaries over a process I am sure he knew did not start, last month or yesterday. It's been an ongoing process. But now, because they know there will be a public outcry against senior government officials getting a pay rise at a time like this, it's like PR, wanatupatia vipindi. They're trying to mitigate and make it look like, no, we don't support it. But in reality, I don't think that's what it is. And Annabelle very aptly put it that the current regime wanajita system ya facts. But if you ask me, the president is a notorious liar, not as an insult, as a fact. He says one thing. He's on record saying we will not increase taxes. Taxes have gone up. He's on record saying...
Did he say we will not increase taxes?
Yes, there's a video. There's a video of him saying taxes will not go up at Tongeza. Yeah, I just don't know.
I haven't come across it.
But okay. There is a video. He's on record saying electricity prices will not go up. They did go up. You know, he's on record saying, I will not borrow like Uhuru, blah, blah, blah. Now we are actually borrowing locally, which is going to hurt, you know, the economy even more, because it means local businesses now can't get credit because government is taking up, you know, all the credit that would have been going towards the private sector. He's on record saying supporting the logging ban, and now that has changed. I mean, there's so many examples. Those are just a few. What do you call that? What do you call that? He's on record saying, ini serikali ya mahasla. Tutaeka mama mboga hapo. Where are they? Right now, it's the elite. It's poor losers, people who are rejected by the people of Kenya, who he is placing in lucrative positions in his government. Right now, budget here, office of the president and deputy president are the ones being budgeted, you know, to go up their expenditure. They are budgeting for luxury vehicles when Kenyans are suffering. It's very, very disappointing. Very, very disappointing. And whoever is advising the president should just tell him Kenyans are not happy on a general. Okay. And we would like to see things change. We would like to see, you know, just a fair regime. Give us fair taxes to pay. People will pay. But even as we are doing that, the government is also notorious for, you know, corruption and losing money in procurement deals and stuff like that. There's this lady I saw the other day trending, lady in red, who was given a lucrative position, and yet she was already, you know, her reputation is in question because of a previous scandal in employing youth in Uasin Gishu County. And still, you find that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs gives her a very lucrative position. So there are a lot of questionable, I don't know whether to call them characters or people with scandals that are bedeviling them, and yet they are in powerful positions in government. And that doesn't seem right, doesn't sit well. So let's see some more meritocracy.
All right.
Yes.
I know that those who are watching who say, you know, innocent until proven guilty, and in Kenya's case, until you have exhausted all appeal mechanisms. It is true,
but Olive, on that very basis, in the private sector, even you as Olive, would you employ someone with a case? No, you'd tell them, go clear yourself. When you are cleared, you can come back. Right. In the meantime, I will employ someone who's clean.
Okay. I saw you shaking your head, Sylvia. The clip I have come across with regard to, what was it? You were increasing taxes. The clip I do remember coming across was the one on Ruto says it's a puzzle that petrol is cheaper in Uganda, but he was fact-checked, and Kenya actually, later on, Kenya selling cheaper fuel than Tanzania, Uganda. So that is the clip I've come across. But Sylvia, you shook your head. You disagree on this, on the question of double speak, given Kenyans were promised it will not be business as usual, and yet it appears that President William Ruto is simply continuing the policies that he criticized of his predecessor.
Olive, you know, one thing I do appreciate about Kenya today is that really and truly we've grown as a nation. We are having healthy debates, and you know, our democracy has really matured. The reason I was shaking my head was the fact that she mentioned that the president is a liar. I think that's a very harsh statement to put across for a head of state. The fact that he has put together a government, and a government that is actually of experienced and well-educated Kenyans that are working on a mandate to deliver Kenya from a crisis that is facing us. It is still facing us. until, you know, the finance bill is implemented so that we can start to see some changes. And these changes are not going to come in the next 1 year, at least 2 to 2.5 years before we see anything settling. This is my predicament in all this, that on one hand, we want Kenya to move forward. We want Kenya to move away from poverty and become one of the emerging economies and become, you know, a good competitor in the world market. But at the same time, we are not willing to pay to take the risks and to pay for the hard work that needs for us Kenyans to get there. We have to tighten the belt. We have been easily taxed. We have not been paying enough taxes. We are not collecting enough taxes. We are not investing in our agriculture. We are not investing in manufacturing in this country. There are a lot of people evading to pay taxes. How do we grow as an economy? It can't come from the vacuum. We really have to, you know, even you as an individual in your own household, if you have bills to pay, 5 loans to pay, you know, you have to sit back and think, which loan do I prioritize? Do I really need to take any more loans? Or what kind of investment do I need to undertake so that my household can become free of debt? And that is exactly what the Kenyan government is doing, led by the President Ruto, that we have to get to a point where we buckle up and get things straight. And this getting things straight is starting with this government. That we've had this superfluous life of borrowing and over-borrowing for infrastructure. We were not borrowing to invest in our food industry. We were not borrowing to invest in our manufacturing industry. We were borrowing to build infrastructure. Fair enough, that is done. However, that debt has to be paid back. Who's going to pay for it? It is the same as Kenyans who have to pay for it, or else our country is at stake by the debtors. And so we've seen the president shift course to actually face the West more than he was facing the South, which is Asia. And that is actually giving us a more competitive edge, and also facing inward. Why why NSSF funds? Why housing levy? This is to put money in a kitty so that if you have people paying enough pension in the NSSF fund, you can, as a government, be able to borrow that money on a low interest, as opposed to borrowing from the generic banks. And that is exactly what they're trying to create. But as Kenyans, we are also having an issue with NSSF. You don't want to pay NSSF, which is actually your money in retirement. It is a benefit to you. It is a saving to you. We don't have, most of the Kenyans don't have a saving culture. We have a poverty cycle being transferred from generation to generation. How do we get wealthy? You can only get wealthy by investing, and also by investing in future funds to protect and shield your family. And so some of that is like the pensions fund, is the health fund, is the housing levy fund. And the government will also be able to consolidate these funds, to put it together and get it to the kitty to be able to put up this social housing together with improved affordable housing for the Kenyans. It's not just houses for people because you have a house and we are allocating you, or rather giving you an additional house because of housing levy. It is to make sure that we do away with the big and vast slums of Kenya. We cannot be a proud country when everywhere you look through your window is a slum somewhere uprising. Those are fellow Kenyans that also need to live well. But there has to be a plan by a government. It has to be a deliberate plan. And the deliberate plan is starting with this Kenya Kwanza government. Okay. Let's give the government a chance. Let's sit back and read for yourself. Do not be listening and, be so quick to judge without getting the facts. Compared, with other nations. How have other nations moved forward? A small country like Sweden, they pay a tax called child tax. Everybody, whether you have a child, as soon as you start employment or business, the first tax you pay is child tax. That child tax makes sure that every child of Sweden, including the king's child and the poorest child, are well taken care of. How do we get to those steps? Is by tightening our belt. Right. And so if the president has said that, the tax bracket has increased, we should actually look back and, we've all been able to we've had a chance to analyze the finance bill, to see where it affects us. There are some taxes that have come down. There are some taxes that have increased. But the VAT was specifically the fact that some people are paying 8%, some people are paying 16%.
All right.
So.
All right, Sylvia, I'll have to cut you short there
Sorry.
because I want to allow Annabelle and Nerima to also give their concluding sentiments, and I know I need to release. I need to release you, Annabelle.
I'd like to correct Vivian. I am not the one who spoke about system facts. It was Nerima. Secondly, I'd like to pick up from where Sylvia has left off, and it comes down to a question of trust. It's very important for a people to trust their leadership. It's very important for citizens to trust their government. So yes, it is a necessity that we need to raise money. But do Kenyans believe that the money being collected is going to be used for the purpose it was intended? The reason why Swedish citizens do not mind paying that child tax is they know as and when that child comes, that money is going to do for them exactly what my government told me it is going to do for me, or it is going to do for them. We are coming from a background of KEMSA. Now, KEMSA, looking at that situation objectively, in all facts table, it may suggest that perhaps the problem was more on the global fund side as opposed to our side. But even then, the fact that that is breaking into, headlines doesn't exactly give Kenyans trust. There's always been this issues of the bureaucracy that it takes to access NHIF or for them to make payment for you. The fact that the perception to ordinary mwananchi is that civil servants tend to have more benefits with NHIF as opposed to ordinary mwananchi. Yet this ordinary mwananchi, sio kila mtu mwenye ataweza kuendea insurance to all these private entities. So they need it to do for them what it does for job group K and I don't know L of civil servants. So is a trust element there? And again, it goes back to what you were asking about judiciary. Yes, judiciary does seem to be damned if you do, damned if you don't. But they also sometimes shoot themselves in the foot. They also sometimes aid in perpetuating that narrative that they may not necessarily be objective. Because, case in point, like yesterday, it is a high interest matter. The evening before, you have communicated that you will be streaming live as from 9 a.m., which is when the decision is supposed to be delivered. And then Kenyans wake up in the morning to find a tweet saying, no, actually, it's 2:30 p.m. with no explanation. Is it 2:30 p.m. because, one of the individuals involved has had to deal with an emergency at home? What is the explanation? You cannot just, as a public entity, tell people, apana, we are delaying by this number of hours, and you relax. Because then what happened? There was an array of tweets from Kenyans saying, simu imekuja, or you're changing the decision. And then you end up with a decision that makes you guys happy. So now you want to go back and ask Kenyans, you're still saying the decision was being changed. But the fact that that was the first thought they ran to speaks to the fact that there's a lack of trust. The fact that even when you go back to the presidential petition decision, the first paragraph when the Chief Justice was introducing it, she started by speaking about how we are a suspicious nation, we come from a background of elections being rigged, and therefore even it doesn't matter how thorough IEBC is, Kenyans always approach an election with the perception that itaibiwa. And the minute someone is beaten at the ballot, they say, kiliibiwa. It's just, there's so much we need to work on as a people. And I do agree with Sylvia to the extent that the president does need support, because you also need to remember, when you're handing over power from one person to the other, in that moment of handing over power, the ship has not stopped. This ship was in motion under this president. It is still in motion as this succeeding president is coming on board. And with Ruto currently, you have to steer that ship with whatever speed it was moving at. You can't just stop it immediately. There's the physical damage you risk causing to the body of the ship. So you have to steer it until it is moving at a speed you want, and hopefully steer it into calm waters, so that now you're able to turn it and move it in whatever direction you want. So there was no day he was just going to jump on board and just speak about turn from the direction Uhuru was taking. He has to, whether he likes it or not, move in that direction for a period of time and then turn the ship. But even as he's doing that, as he's working to, steady the ship, he also needs to work very hard to earn the trust of the people, because for you to win an election, you have very many Kenyans believing in you. Do not, in the process of steadying the ship, lose that trust, because now once you've lost that trust, you do not have the goodwill of the people, and then now the remaining 3 or 3.5 years of your term are going to be very difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and picking up from your analogy, Nerima, in your concluding remarks, I wonder what you make of you know, he needs to steer the ship. You know, he can't just turn it around. But given the fact that we are now experiencing some of this discomfort, is it evidence that the president is actually steering the ship to favor the hustler versus those who have enjoyed the trappings of power previously?
Within the finance document, there are a lot of questions, and I agree completely with Annabelle. And to Sylvia, it's not about us refusing to pay taxes. It's about trust and accountability. And we have seen the number of cases that have disappeared. As of now, counted 8 that were currently in court and dropped, or going to court and dropped. So even within the question of manufacturing and that almost disappearing, or certain taxes being reduced or taken away, it benefits a certain group of people and not necessarily the majority population. And even on the housing tax, initially, remember, it was a levy, and then coming in without a plan. By the way, there was no plan. And having experts question it, and then it being changed to a tax now, and removing that 7-year period, and now it's open. So there are a lot of questions of things that only government can do, where even in a company, you cannot come with a plan and no budget, and then all of a sudden saying, this is the plan, and looking a bit confused. So yes, I think that a lot more planning needs to be done. And even when we're talking about a majority youth population, the president has assented and signed several agreements that is actually harming the youth and their access to online engagement. And this is factual. This information can be shared. And it questions whether he has the foresight in understanding the population that exists and the access that is required. Because even when we talk about depending on agriculture, because we need to feed this country, food security, we have not talked about the drought. We are in a drought, the worst that Kenya has ever seen. It's not even in the headlines. We're talking about how we're going to support this disaster. We know what's taking the forefront is our government doesn't have the pulse of the people. So it's to use this period to listen to the public. Otherwise, he's definitely going to have a difficult time leading the country in the next 4 years.
So I will conclude the conversation there, ladies. But I want to thank my panelists this morning for contributing. We've just had right now from Nerima Wako Ojiwa, Executive Director, Siasa Place and Political Analyst. We've had from Sylvia Mulamba, Women and Youth Advocacy, Annabelle Njoki, Advocate, Vivian Chak, Governance and Political Analyst. As always, ladies, I learned a lot when we sit here and discuss some of these issues. I just want to make mention of a report that I came across in the Standard, which has left me troubled. Budget boss tells Senate committee that counties owe 85 billion shillings in pension. Nairobi has the highest balance of 42.76 billion shillings, followed by Mombasa 10.65 billion shillings. She blames the debt to refusal by successive governments to honor obligations. All right, let's leave AM Live at that point. We take a break. I'll be back with Your World.